Hello everyone! Today I want to talk about Shenhe. I already did a video on her, but that was before they released this blog post, and after reading it I got some new ideas that might be interesting to you and hopefully help you decide if you want to wish for this character. I tried to keep this video short, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. Again, she is a cryo polearm support character, so the normal attacks aren't too interesting to us. And the elemental skill has two options. You either press it for a small forward dash that deals some cryo damage, and the other option is to hold it for a small back dash that summons this little clone and also deals some cryo damage. And obviously with her first passive skill, she also grants some buffs to your team. If you just press it, it is a little bit of elemental skill and elemental burst skill damage to your whole party. And with the hold skill, it is a little bit normal, charged and plunging attack damage for your whole party. And the interesting thing that I came up with is you could probably just use the sacrificial lance on her to reset the skill cooldown, and you might be able to stack both of these effects simultaneously, which can be really strong with, for example, Ayaka. She uses a lot of her normal and charged attacks, and also deals a lot of damage with her elemental skill and elemental burst skill. And now we have the elemental burst skill. It just deals some cryo damage periodically and lowers cryo resistance and physical resistance. And with her passive skill, she also increases the cryo damage. So she is really good in a freeze team with, for example, Ayaka or Ganyu, or even in a physical team because she also lowers physical resistance. One thing you can see in this animation though is she also hits twice every time, and then she pauses for a second and again hits twice. And if both of these hits apply cryo, she might be a really good melt team enabler as well, because if you have an elemental burst skill that hits multiple times, you can guarantee that it leaves the desired element behind, and you can enable some teams, like for example Xingqiu. His elemental burst skill, I think it hits 3 times. Each sword individually applies a hydro, so he is the best vaporized team enabler, and this is pretty much the same concept for melt. And now for team compositions, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I already did this in the last video and I'll just link it in the description if you're curious. Let me just talk a little bit about the melt team now. It's basically the same concept as the Xingqiu vaporized team. You just replace him with a Shenhe. And obviously she isn't out, so let me just pick Chongyun here as a placeholder for now. And you pick any Pyro main DPS really. Obviously some are easier to use than others. Hu Tao and Diluc, for example, are good. Klee is a little iffy because her elemental burst skill applies so much Pyro additionally that it can be hard to vaporize her charge attacks. But it's the same problem with Xingqiu. You pick any Anemo character to lower the resistances with the Viridescent set effect. Obviously, characters like Sucrose, who have the Elemental Mastery buff, or Kazuha with the Elemental Damage buff, have added benefits. And as a healer, anything works. Obviously, Bennett is great to attack buff. And this is pretty much it. You just apply Pyro with Bennett, lower the resistance with your Anemo character, and then activate Shenhe's elemental burst skill and switch to your Pyro main DPS and just melt like crazy. And now for the build, theoretically you can build her very budget, just enough energy recharge to get her elemental burst skill off, and you just play her for her buffs. Otherwise, you just build her like a sub DPS like Zhangling for example, just some attack, crit rate, crit damage, and a cryo damage bonus to add some personal damage to her. And obviously enough energy recharge is probably around 160 to 180% depending on how expensive her elemental burst skill will be. One important thing I forgot to mention is, if you run Shenhe in a freeze team with the Blizzard Strayer set and the Cryo Resonance, you get 55% crit chance for free. That isn't displayed here, so there's no reason to build more than 45% crit chance on her to reach the 100%. Otherwise, if you have more, like in this build for example, you would waste a lot of stats that you could have elsewhere. And now for weapon options. Like I said earlier, I really like the idea of using the sacrificial lance on her. Unfortunately, I don't have one to show off right now, but the effect is it has a chance to reset the cooldown of the elemental skill after using it. Essentially, that means you use the hold option, reset the cooldown, and use the press option, and you instantly should get both effects of her passive skill. And even if it doesn't work, you still want to build something like Energy Recharge, so it's still a good weapon. Otherwise, you could build the Favonius Lance or the Catch, for example. The Catch might be wasted on her depending on how much damage she actually does with her Elemental Burst skill. so you might still want to use this on jungling rather than Shenhe. And lastly, let me talk a little bit about artifacts. We already covered the substats earlier. For main stats, you most likely want attack percentage here. If you aren't running a spear that has energy recharge as substat, you obviously could run energy recharge here as main stat. And otherwise, you want cryo damage bonus here and crit rate or crit damage, whichever one balances your stats better in the last slot. For these sets, she will most likely deal most of her damage with the Elemental Burst skill, is what I assume. So the Emblem of Severed Fate set would be a good option. If you don't have anyone using the Noblesse set in your party, you could obviously also use this on her. And if you're running her in a freeze team, like I said earlier, the Blizzard Strayer is probably the best option. Alright, we made it to the end. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this helped you decide whether you want Shenhe or not. I will wish for her and get her once she comes out, and will upload this to YouTube, so stay tuned for this. Until then, have fun until it, and bye bye.